Let's talk to Muhammad. He, him from California. Wants to talk about moral codes and breaking rules.
Okay.
Yes,
Muhammad?
hello.
Oh, there we are.
Hi, how are you?
Can you guys hear me?
You're coming
That,
through a little choppy, but we'll see what we can do. Go ahead and give your thesis here.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about like our
Are you on speaker right now?
every no, I'm not.
Okay. I'm hearing a lot of your room, so let's try again.
Okay, is it better now?
A little bit.
yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I wanted to talk about, like each one of us, we personally have like a moral code that we live by, right? And I was thinking like about that, we're put in situations in our day-to-day life where, we're forced to break one of our rules. And I'll give you a great example. So imagine like you guys have like a spouse, right? And your spouse, they ask you, like, honey, do I look good? But like, they don't look good, but you see, you're put in a position now. And like, if like we value truth as a society, right? So you're put in the position now. What do you value more, truth or making your spouse feel good? And you have to choose. You're forced to break one of your rules in this situation. So, and there's like many different examples, where this happens. Like, I'll give you an example, like a made up example. Like, say somehow I have a child, right? And my child, he's starving, like he's starving. He has no food to eat. If I don't get him food, he's going to die. But I'm so poor, I don't have any money. So what should I do in that situation? It's like, sorry about that. I follow the law, it's part of my moral code. I follow the law, but also I value my child's life. I want him to survive. So what do? Do I steal, food from my child, or do I let my child die? What do I value more? Do I value following the law more, or, letting my child survive? I have to choose, and I want to tell you guys that I didn't really like think about these things, like not that much, but like what really made me like start thinking about these things, and I was like, oh, like shit, man, was so I saw The Dark Knight, right? By Christopher Nolan, and that movie, it's like the Joker, he wins in the movie, and I'll tell you why. Like, Joker, he tells Batman that like the only sensible way to live in this world is without rules, and tonight you're gonna break your one rule. So like Batman, he has a moral code, right? And like Joker, time and time again in the movie, he makes Batman, he puts him in like these ethical dilemmas where he's forced to break his rules. I'll give you one example. So,
okay, whoa. We got plenty of examples here,
yeah.
Mohammed, and you're
No, we
going
get
in
what you're
some
saying.
really interesting places. Crafty, take it from here. What do you got first?
Right. So you're asking what is more important, morals or laws, or like moral codes, or yeah, your own rules.
no, sorry.
Really,
I'm saying, no, I'm saying that you get put in situations in your life where you're forced to break one of your rules, and you have to choose which one you value more.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
the one that you value more, you're logically going to break the other rule.
yeah.
and then the other part of that is to remember that logic is only getting you to do so far. Like sometimes when you are face to face with a moral decision, you're going to make a different decision than the one you would make if you were just treating it as a hypothetical. So
Yeah, it's
there's a lot of
definitely
layers
case
to
by
this.
case. It's
Yeah.
definitely case by case, and the decision. For instance, you talked about feeding your child, or going hungry. Part of that is knowledge, is having the knowledge, having the resources available, and knowing where to go for the resources, and like, I hate to say this, but doing the research and understanding what your options actually are. Sometimes because we're emotional creatures, we rush into certain situations. And if we had actually stopped and took a breath and had the knowledge behind us to say, actually, it's not this false dichotomy of one or the other. I have a third option. But it is by a case-by-case rules. My granddad always said, a principle isn't a principle unless you're willing to stick to it. There's a difference that we give to certain principles. And starvation is basically going to override any principle that you have, because it's about survival. So survival will always take the place of principle. Doesn't matter who you are. But having the knowledge behind you to say, well, it's not either or, it's not black or white, it's not this or that, there is a third option, there is another way to go, is beneficial. And that's about education.
What you got, Muhammad?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I agree. It's just like, okay, say with that example I gave you, like with the spouse, right? Like, we as a society, we like to tell the truth. We believe like we should always tell the truth, right? But
not necessarily. Not necessarily. We are a very complicated creature, and we understand what lies are, and the reasons and the necessity to lie sometimes, even if it's a small white lie. That's the unwritten rules of society, right? So we have the basic rules of what you can and cannot do, which are laws, which we agree to. And then you have the unwritten rules, which are things like don't cheat on your spouse, or pretend your spouse looks nice if they look like crap, which all of us have done. Those little white lies are not on the same. They don't weigh the same as the big moral issues of, should I kill this person or in self-defense, or should I do this instead of that. The weight isn't the same for every situation, and that's why we're saying you have to weigh up the situation and your position within that situation in order to come to a conclusion. Doesn't mean you're right, doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're human. And you're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to have those little white lies, just so long as we understand the consequences for lying.
Every time I want to say something, you say it better than I do, so I'll take it.
I'm sorry.
Just like, in the specific example of the spouse, I feel like I would be doing a disservice by telling them that they look more attractive than they do, because then they'll, go out there in that outfit that may not be the most flattering on them. So I'm more likely to say something like, well, why don't we keep shopping and look at some other things that might look a little bit better.
You're brutal.
but again, that's a specific example. But I guess where I'm going with that is, there's, I like Crafty said, I love studying context culture, not necessarily the written rules, but the little hidden. This is how you get along in our society.
Yeah, as long as you understand the consequence to what you're deciding. That's the main thing. You weigh up the consequences. Too many people in our society don't understand what consequences mean, because we live in our own little bubbles that don't have consequences. There are hefty consequences for some things and not for others. So as long as you weigh up the consequences of your actions, that's the main thing.
All right, Mohammed, I hope we gave you some insight tonight.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love to keep talking with you, but we got a couple of other calls on the docket. We'll give you some places to get in contact with us and keep in contact with us. But thank you very much for the call.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.